Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 to order with roll call, please.
Weinhammer? Here. Kraus?
Here.
Betts? Here. Cavelli? Here. McAlpine?
Here.
Collier?
Here. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move to the public comment section where people can talk about anything that's not otherwise on the agenda. I will hold your questions till the end of the presentation. Hopefully we'll get some of your questions answered. This is the only thing we're talking about tonight. So Eric, want to go ahead and get started? We're going to have a discussion on the commuter parking and quarterly permit updates.
All right, thank you, Mayor. As we had previously discussed the last committee of the whole meeting, staff has been reviewing the situation with our commuter parking relative to different factors that have been impacting our parking fund, as well as some other ideas that we had and presented with regards to potentially updating the configuration and the process by which we charge for daily fee and permit parking. I'll just quickly recap some of the items for the benefit of the public that weren't at the last meeting. The factors that we reviewed that are impacting parking. One is the rising maintenance costs. Two, the new Metro Depot, which just recently opened, which gives some new maintenance responsibilities by virtue of the agreement between Metro and the village. And then lastly, some unbalanced parking utilization that's been observed in the parking lots, where certain areas are very highly utilized, and then certain areas are also erratically utilized or underutilized. This just summarizes those different maintenance responsibilities that the village has for the commuter parking lots. Not only is it infrastructure, like our parking lot pavements and lights and so forth, we have different systems of the building that are involved, as well as different operational maintenance services like snow plow removal, janitorial, street sweeping, and landscape maintenance and so forth. And then, of course, we have different capital projects that are required as part of our agreements with the railroad and Metro to maintain these parking lots. One of the bigger ones in the radar is the resurfacing of certain lots, particularly the south lots, where the pavement condition is approaching the end of its useful life, as well as some other projects that are still ongoing with the Metro station improvements, like our western pedestrian crossing, where some pedestrian gates and signals will be added, as well as the new maintenance garage so that we can demolish the old Metro station building. And with all those projects, the last capital improvement plan summary and budget process outlined those 5-year capital expenses. They amounted to approximately $1.77 million. And based on our current revenue with the parking fund and our current fees that we have in place, we have about $1.15 million projected. So with that slight deficit, we are proposing some adjustments for the board to consider. First, here's an exhibit that outlines the current configuration of our parking lots. So as the board and the public are probably aware, we have a segregated parking system where there's a lot in the northwest portion of the area that is for permit only. So holders of a quarterly permit can park in those lots. If you're there on a daily fee basis, you can only park in the lots that are shaded in green, which would be the far northwest corner and then south of Main Street. And at the last meeting, we discussed some different options with regards to addressing the upcoming maintenance needs, capital needs, and the rising costs for that maintenance. Of course, we can continue as we are now with our current fee structures and not change that. That, however, does bring some challenges for continuing maintenance, as well as some other factors with potential state legislation that could impact our parking fees. It's looking like at this point that the municipal lots will be exempt from that, but until that's for certain, we're just keeping that in the radar. We could just do a blanket increase in all of our parking fees and keep our structure the same. However, that wouldn't address some of the underutilization of certain lots and bringing the parking fee process, maybe more in line with the current standard with regards to how many other communities are doing that. And that leads us to the third option, which we proposed last time and will continue to discuss tonight, which is the tiered parking fee process. And then Courtney Sage from the Public Works Department is going to help explain the different options that we presented last time.
So as we discussed last time for the tiered option for the fees, the standard spaces would go up a quarter and then be $1.75. And then there would be the preferred parking or the premium spaces that would be $2. The average along the whole line is around $1.76 for a fee. And then when it comes to the quarterly permits, we had proposed it would increase for the residents to $100, and then non-residents would pay $120 for the quarterly fees. And then you can see that the daily fee equivalents would be $1.52 for residents and about $1.82 for non-residents.
So holders of those permits would see a discount relative to the proposed daily fees. Standard spaces being $1.75 as proposed, and the preferred spaces that are closer at $2. So even at the non-resident rate, you would still see a discount. Another factor to consider is that the convenience surcharge for using the app to pay as opposed to paying at the terminal does add, I believe it's a 37-cent addition to your permit fee. So currently, even with the $1.50 rate, the commuters using that app are still paying more than what we're proposing with the new permits rate.
So it costs more to use the app than to
Correct.
buy something from a person?
Yeah, so if you were to pay with cash at the pay terminals on site, it would be $1.50 currently, or $1.75 to $2 as proposed. If you use the app, it's still the base $1.50 fee plus the 37-cent surcharge, so $1.87.
Who gets that surcharge? Does that go to like the app developer?
It
or
goes
does
to
that come
the
from village?
fee in order to support the use of the app and our license to have the app available. So it's a convenience fee.
Yeah, residents, well, I should say residents and non-residents like to do that sometimes, and there's more than what I initially thought. They just like to get on the train and then they just pay from the train. Then they'll pay that extra 37 cents and don't really blink an eye at it.
We have added new pay terminal kiosks on the inbound platform side. So there's one located inside the new shelter and one located in the covered waiting area of the new depot building. So we do have another option for convenience sake if you want to park your car and make sure you get across the tracks to the right platform and then pay on that side. But that app, as Administrator Reich mentioned, does add another layer of convenience and speed for you.
Here's a graph that just shows the current quarterly permits across the Northwest line, with the average being $121. So our proposed resident quarterly permits would still be under that average. And then also for non-residents, the average is around 123, so we would still be slightly below that as well for non-residents.
Now, based on some of the feedback we received at the last committee meeting and some additional review by staff, we do have some proposed changes to the commuter parking configuration that we're going to explain tonight. So the first one would be the ability for us to split the current existing bay of handicap accessible parking, which is in this center section between what I'll call High Road and the old building. So it's this bay right here. Currently, all the handicap accessible spaces are located there, and that was because previously the western access from the parking lot to the platform consisted of only a set of stairs. Since the completion of our new ramp that was constructed about 2 years ago, it does now afford us the ability to move those to a more appropriate location and split those handicap accessible spaces. So put some of them at the western edge right by the ramp, which then gives you the shortest route from those spaces to the platform. And then the other half we would propose to leave on the eastern side near the existing location for those that are destined to go towards the building. So again, this would be the closest parking spaces to the new building location. Additionally, we're also proposing, with the excessive width of this one-way aisle, shifting some of those spaces to the opposite side, which then frees up additional room in this bay here to create new preferred parking spaces that could be used on a daily fee basis, or if you're a permit holder, to park there as well. And then lastly, we're also proposing to eliminate this area here that was previously used for free motorcycle parking and converting those to 10 new preferred parking spaces available, again, for daily fee use or by permit holders. Based on the discussion at the last meeting, it was suggested that we don't offer separate discounted motorcycle parking areas and allow them to still park in our lots, but utilize the same fee structure and rates as the other vehicles. So in our new proposed model, we don't have a separate area for motorcycle parking. They would just be, again, allowed to use any space per the structure that we end up, whether it be a standard space or a preferred space. And then this just summarizes kind of the changes. The net number of parking spaces would actually increase in this proposal, in this proposed reconfiguration, by 15 spaces. And then the next suggestion from the committee at the last meeting was to investigate the possibility of offering what we're going to call a premium reserved parking space. So this limited number of spaces would be available by permit and be reserved for the permit holder up until 4 p.m. on weekdays. So if you were to pay this premium rate, that space would not be able to be utilized by other quarterly permit holders or daily fee users. It would be signed as reserved and also signed from an enforcement perspective and to help ensure that it stays clear for the person paying for it with a reservation plaque and a fee that we're proposing to set at $150 if you're violating that and parking there without the valid reserved parking permit. And the possibility that the vehicle also could be relocated and towed to the remote lot. So to help discourage violations, there could be a financial penalty and as well as an inconvenience. So if you're thinking you could violate it and park there just for the one day, you might find that your vehicle is actually in the furthest lot out on the commuter station. We're proposing, again, a tiered resident and non-resident fee for that reserved premium parking space. The village of Barrington to our east was one of the first communities to start this concept. So we are proposing to match that same annual fee at $1,200 per year, or the equivalent of $100 per month if you do an auto pay for 12 months. So that matches what Barrington does over in their community. And for our residents, we would discount that by 25% at $900 per year or $75 per month. Given the likely strong demand for this option, especially in the initial rollout of it, if we were to go with this concept, we'd propose a lottery. So we'd open it up to permit holders or other new commuters that want to utilize this service to submit to us that they want to be part of the lottery, and then we would draw the first 15 applicants to utilize those spaces. And again, just like the rest of our commuter lot, these spaces will be available for free parking when they're open after 4 p.m. on weekdays and on weekends. And that goes for all commuter parking spaces currently.
So tonight we have 3 options for the parking configuration. This first option is the one that you would have seen at the last meeting, just highlighting that there would be the 15 premium reserved spots, and then we would convert part of the south commuter lot to the preferred parking at $2, and the other part would stay at the standard $1.75 rate. And then to the north lot, we would split that as well, $2 in the blue, $1.75 in the green. And then quarterly permit holders would not have their own separate lot, but would be able to park in any spot in any of the lots. And then for this second option, instead of having the $2 preferred lots, you would instead just have permit parking only, and then the $1.75 would be the standard fee, and we would still keep the premium reserve spots, 15 of them.
So this option is essentially the same as the other, except that if you would like to use preferred parking, you would have to get a permit as opposed to being able to pay a daily fee.
And then under this final option, we would take the furthest lot and keep it at $1.50. Currently, that lot is quite underutilized, but it would provide an option for those who would like to keep paying that rate they pay now. They would just have a bit of a longer walk.
So this option is the same as option 2, with the price difference in that far remote lot, just to try to encourage more utilization of that lot. So those are a lot of numbers here, but we'll summarize it briefly. But essentially, the current configuration and current fee structure of our lots generates a projected annual revenue of about $220,000. With option 1, which was the tiered parking rate, where there's daily fee rates for standard parking and then a higher daily fee rate for the preferred parking. And then, of course, adding the suggested premium reserve parking for those 15 spaces. We are looking at a projected revenue with that model of about $266,000, which would be an increase of $46,000 per year over our current financial model. Then option 2 and 3, if you were to make preferred parking require a permit, it would have a slightly lower revenue, but it's very marginal. Basically a $2,000 to $6,000 difference from our option 1. So all 3 models do generate a reasonable amount of additional revenue, which would support all of our additional capital projects and maintenance responsibilities, with staff still recommending option 1, given the flexibility for the daily fee users to park in both the preferred and standard location, with very nominal increases in line with the averages with the rest of the Northwest line, and as well as continuing to offer permit parking convenience and resident discounts. So with that, we are, skip that, sorry. I'm sorry, one more thing. With the ordinance changes that we've required and possibly some logistical agreement amendments with Metro and the railroad, we are also suggesting at the same time considering a prohibition of backing into parking stalls in our commuter lots. It's not a prevalent problem. I don't believe it's caused any crashes to our knowledge at this point, but it is observed quite frequently. You can see in the photo, the cars highlighted in purple there are parked basically backwards in those stalls in a one-way aisle. The purpose likely being that instead of having to exit your parking space and drive all the way around the lot to come back out and exit, they're looking for the quick getaway out of our commuter parking lots. So it really probably only impacts certain parts of certain one-way drive aisles, this being probably the most prevalent. Like I mentioned, it's not a crash generating issue at this point, but doing an ordinance and signing it would likely be a good preventative measure to prevent accidents and prevent cars from traveling the wrong way in that one-way aisle.
We have had complaints about that too. So, yeah.
I'm sure when everyone's
So
getting out.
I think residents, we haven't heard of any crashes, but I think residents probably have had or seen some near misses with that. And so that got us to take a look at it. It does make some sense to have an ordinance in place.
So what are they trying to, they're trying to like just
Trying to cross.
sneak out real fast
Right.
before
Yeah.
everybody else is
Instead
getting
of going
there?
around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
it's one way going up and all the way around.
right where
So they
the
would have to
cursor,
go out
right where
this
that
way.
cursor is,
Okay.
trustee
Instead of
Kraus.
trying-
So they just
They're going this way,
So there's-
going up this
go
way. instead
against the
going
flow
around
of
this way.
traffic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I get it, but
Pardon me?
Eric, can you show the point
Where
out?
the cursor, you said where the cursor.
So the cursor is moving. This is the area that cars are parking sometimes backwards in the parking space. Instead of backing out and driving out this way to exit the lot in the evening, they are going backwards in the space and driving the wrong way and out.
So it's something we'd like the board just to consider here, wanted to bring to you for further discussion. But from a rate perspective, certainly a rate adjustment we feel makes sense when you look at all the improvements that are going on right now and in the future. We talk about the new building, the new platform, the new ped crossing, the new pedestrian ramp, repaving the lots potentially next year. There's a lot of new infrastructure that's going on within the parking lots down there, and certainly it makes sense for the people that are going to use that, benefit from all those new uses to pay for those. So looking for any feedback or discussion this evening from the village board.
I think my only suggestion would be if we have 15 residents of Cary that want the premium space, I think they ought to be allowed to purchase those first. And then if we don't have enough that want the 15, then we could open it up to non-residents.
I like that.
I like that too.
The other thing is, I noticed in option 3, you had the $1.50 spot. Can we include that with all the options? Like I liked 1 as well, but I also like leaving that $1.50 option with potentially 1, right? So
Yes, that could be a standalone feature of any of the options. That's correct.
okay.
Yes.
I'd be in favor of that too, because when I drive by there, there's nobody ever
No.
there. There's only 1 or 2 cars parked down there.
And that usually the long-term walk.
And there's only about 46 spaces there, and it's a nominal price difference, so it really won't affect our bottom line in terms of the increased revenue. But I do agree, it does offer convenience for people that don't want to pay more and maybe try and get that lot more utilized.
We always have the opportunity to expand the premium reserved parking,
Right, there's a bit.
whether it's in that area or, some of these other areas. If there's a high demand for it,
Right.
we'll see it the first go around. I mean, we may not get anyone that's interested in it, or we could have, 50 people that want to do it. We like that. Obviously, that's, guaranteed that they're going to be paying that. They're paying that monthly on auto pay. So that works out well both for us, but it also works out well for the commuters because it's a guaranteed spot. It's a guaranteed good spot. You don't have to fumble with money or pain before you get to your train. You can just park and walk right across and get on the platform, get on the train.
And in our financial projections with 15 spaces and with an assumption, not knowing kind of the turnout, if we assume that 8 of those 15 were non-residents and 7 were residents, that would generate almost $16,000 per year of new revenue in the parking fund. And since we're not taking away net parking spaces with the other 15 spaces that we were able to add with the reconfigurations, it is genuinely new revenue for us.
Yeah, just as a reminder too, I just want to remind everyone, this money stays in the parking fund.
Right.
This is not used for other operations. The village is purely put in for amenities for the commuters, both with repaving parking lots, the building, lighting, any other work that we do down at the parking lot. So it doesn't fund general operations of the village.
I think that it's important for our residents to know, and those that are here tonight, that I think when we look back at it, we said it's been over 10 years since there's been any increase whatsoever on any of the fees also. So that's, I think, a factor that we're looking at considering. But I would love to hear from those that are here in the audience, kind of get your feedback with what your thoughts are. I assume you guys are riding the Metro, and I'd love your input. I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Sure, come on up. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, one of my questions is about my address. My name is Janie King, and I live on Mink Trail. Cary is the actual city name, but I'm in unincorporated Cary. Would I get resident prices? I do for the park
Because you're not
district
within
stuff?
our corporate boundaries. We have step that kind of helps us when dealing with that, because you don't,
Well, I get it for the library, I get it for the park district.
right.
Yeah, fortunately,
So-
the mayor's correct. You have to be within our corporate boundaries.
Okay,
That's how we
so I would
delineate a
have the
lot of
higher
different
rate of 120.
things. Correct.
Okay. Another thing, I'd like to address the backing in. I don't know how to point where I park. But it's at the end of, when you pull in, right before you get to the north lot. It's at the very end of that, usually where the snow plows
In the
put
permit
the
lot.
snow. Yes,
Yep.
in the permit.
Yep.
And I park in reverse because in the morning, I don't have people walking behind me. And at night, when I'm trying to pull out, I do. And if I'm facing that way, I can see the straggler people who are walking slower than other people. And with it being dark as much as it is at night, that helps me. And it makes me not back over people. Whereas I've had more near misses backing up in the dark. And, you know, somebody's behind a car, the car's taller, I can't see, I'm stretched, I'm looking. And then suddenly somebody's banging on the back of my car and I'm stopping suddenly going, oh my God, I almost hit somebody. So that's why I back in, is so that when I'm pulling out at night in the dark, I can see better, it's in the front. So just addressing those.
Did you have any other questions?
Just a couple of things in regards to backing into the stalls. First, when people are coming into the parking lot, it does impede people coming into the parking lot because they have to back up and then, you know, kind of negotiate that into that parking stall, number one. Number two, I concern myself with people, how far do you let that happen in regards to where it makes sense to back in versus not? And I'm kind of a universal guy in terms of if you make ordinance that you know, pull in, we don't have to worry about where it's okay to back in and where it's not okay to back in. And then third, I anticipate in the future, in my discussions with Barrington Police Chief, that they use now a different system to kind of account for who's paid and who's not, and they use a license plate scanner. So they, in the future, we will probably look for that somewhere down the road. That way you don't have to have the spaces numbered, and as you go through the parking lot, people put in their license plate in the kiosks, or they register them to the village. So when you scan through the lot, you'd have to have that, and it's always the back of the car that has a registration. They should have both. But in some states, they don't need to have a front registration plate, where in Illinois, you have to have a front and back, but everyone would still have that back registration plate that would be scanned somewhere in the future.
And I would also add that, yeah, definitely, I actually am a proponent of backing into parking spaces from the, seeing what's coming at you when you're leaving a space. So I totally agree with Ms. King. But it, that obviously applies and works very well when you have 90-degree parking and two-way aisles. When you have an angled parking space that are angled with the direction of flow, it does make it more challenging. Some people that have larger vehicles or maybe aren't as good of a driver, maybe like myself, it would be hard to get out of that space when you're backed into it on that angle and make that turn into it. So that's just another factor to consider. But yeah, I do agree with your statement about the pedestrian safety.
Where I'm doing it is at the very end. So I literally am just pointed straight to turn down the middle aisle. And I also, to address your issue, I will wait for people pulling in to go past me before, but I get there early enough I can do that. But that's part of why I get there early enough. So I'm not trying to be inconsiderate.
No, we definitely appreciate the feedback.
I got 3 people behind me, let me pull off to the side and let them go,
So,
because it does take longer to back in.
There's two ladies, did you have any comments or questions about the parking? If you do, come up to the microphone. Pardon me?
I just came in to absorb everything that was happening. I received a flyer.
Come up to the microphone, please.
My name is Jane Berry, and I've been a rider of the Metro line now for 10 years. I work downtown, and one of the things was the reason I came tonight was for the flyer that I got in the mail, because I wanted to hear if the changes that were being proposed as far as the increases go. And as you, I'm an unincorporated, so I know I'm looking at a higher rate for parking permit, which I would never deny myself anyway, because I do like having that courtesy of being able to park in a assigned spot or assigned area. The proposed changes I see, I can understand. Nothing's been changed for quite a while, so costs are rising. I just came because right now, with my job, right now, we're on a single income. My family is, my husband hasn't been able to find a job. So I'm looking at everything costly because I'm on a budget. So I just that's one of the reasons why I was here, because this will increase my budget on the parking permit. So it's just one of those things that I came for here to find out. And a lot of my questions have been answered. As far as the backing in, yeah, it's been an issue, because when people are trying to catch that one train, there's people backing in that are not as considerate as her. And what they do is that they basically back up cars trying to come in both directions, from Main Street, both ways from the stoplight. And it creates a congestion, and people are trying to cross over to get to the tracks, to the platform. And then you've got other cars honking their horns because they can't go park because they've got to go back to the standard lot. So there's issues right there with that too. So, because not everybody's as considerate as you are. But, I'm sorry. But anyway, that's the main reason why I'm here tonight. One of the issues, one of the things I did want to maybe suggest too is the possibility of having more than one exit at night. Traffic backs up. I literally, depending what train I take home, I will literally just sit there in the parking lot for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, because there's only one exit out of that lot. And if there could be another exit added, that would be an absolute wonder, because it would really alleviate a lot of people. People run to their cars at night just so they can get in line to get out first. And that's like, and it's a total chaotic, because then the thing is too, is that depending on which row you're parked in, they don't want to let anybody else in to get out. So you're stuck. That's why I just sit there and watch everybody. And then when I think it's pretty much clear, I back out and I go. So that's another something else I wanted to mention too. But for the most part, I mean, it's great. It really is. One other thing that would be really, really nice is the new depot is really nice. So is the little warming shelter that you've got in the middle. But that platform is very long, and there's nothing way down at the very far end of the platform. So for those of us who come across and we stand down there, there's not even a little shelter type thing that you could even stand in. So I don't even know if that's an option to even think about putting something way down there to cover the whole platform itself. I don't know, but something to think about, possibly to look at and see what kind of costs would be involved. I'm not saying it has to be totally enclosed, but even just like what we had before, with just a little 3 sides and a roof and a little warming light in it would be great too. So that's it. That's all I have.
Good
Thank you for your
feedback.
time.
Thank you.
Did you have any questions? Okay.
Brian Mathis. I live on Bayberry and Fox Trails. I'm a permit holder and I'm a daily rider. I've got 2 concerns from what I've heard tonight. One around the permit, doing away with an area for permit holders specifically. I mean, obviously, the primary reason I hold a permit is the convenience. It's not so much the cost, but the next piece is the accountability of the parkers around me. They're all permitted. We know who they are. They're the daily riders. And when it comes to parking in that lot, when I have to park in the cash lot, that's where I pick up dings in the car and things like that. I think there's, a little bit more respect, if you will, of people that are the daily riders and the permit holders. So I would hate to see you do away with an area specifically called out for the permit holders. And the other piece I was going to point out is I do ride a motorcycle, and I will park in the summer. It has nothing to do with being free. Just I want to ride. If you do away with the parking area for the motorcycles, I see 2 problems with that. There's no place to put a hang tag on a motorcycle that's not going to walk away or blow away. So I don't know how we'll deal with that. But the other thing is I've lost track of the number of times I've seen people park a motorcycle, myself included, and somebody will come barreling into a spot thinking that the spot is unoccupied because they don't see the motorcycle until it's too late. I foresee that problem in significant fashion in the commuter lot. So a couple things to consider.
How do you like the new train station?
I love it. It's nice.
Thank you. Okay. Anything from over here? Any comments about?
Mark, I think Martha.
Oh,
Hello, Martha Ritter, 239 School Street. I'd like to talk about the bike rack again. There's a big snow pile, and I came 2 weeks ago to ask if they could move it. Well, I guess they couldn't move the snow pile, so they moved the bike racks together like that. So now you can only park on either side of them, which makes even less sense. Then I go back, 3 days ago? One of the bike racks is turned over on its side. I'm like, okay, that's getting even better. Now you can only park, 4 bikes there? My son rides his bike all the time there. So then I go pick up my son today. Now there's only 1 bike rack. The other one's gone. I'm like, wow, this is even getting better. What, next time there's going to be none? You can't ride your bike anymore? Now they're making you drive and pay?
We did remove one of the bike racks. It's broken and we have to fix it. That's why the one is gone. It's going to come back though once it's all fixed.
I knew it. See? Okay, so at least you could put them a little further apart so you can fit more than 3 bikes there. People do ride their bikes. I saw bikes there today. Whatever.
thank you. Do we have any comments here about fees,
Yeah, can you put the
parking,
fee structure
permits?
back up, please?
Well, and one of the questions I just had is that is a good point that I didn't think about with the motorcycles. How would you manage that with the hangers and blowing off? Like, what options would you have?
That's something we will have to look
We'd
in more
have to
detail.
explore, yeah.
Okay.
Stickers are one option, and we can, we'll definitely look into talking to other communities that have also done away with their permit-only reserved parking lots. I know Crystal Lake and some others don't have those separate lots any longer. So it's something that other communities do, and we'll look into the options on the motorcycle side.
Okay.
If we don't have a mechanism to accommodate that, then obviously we would have to kind of operate it just as we do now, and motorcycles, maybe have to use a daily fee or the app, or we would have to look into converting some of the current spaces into motorcycle spaces. You can do that by taking a standard space, slicing it in half in width, and then maybe striping out, shortening the length to address that concern that you can't see the motorcycle when it's parked, or that a car coming in can't see it, because sometimes the cycles get pushed too far back into the stall. But that obviously does then eliminate and reduce the number of available spaces for regular vehicles in the overall total.
Right, so for like the winter months, those are just unused spaces then?
Right, it'd be very challenging. You can't restripe in the winter, so those smaller, separated, dedicated motorcycle spaces would likely be very underutilized in the winter months, unless we do have a lot of winter cyclists out there. But so that's the drawback, the kind of the con to that option.
Okay.
And it was talking about the preferred parking and the permit parking, getting rid of permit, where you're not really, only option 1 was getting rid of permit parking?
Correct.
Okay.
So premium reserve versus permit. I'm trying to address, when Brian came up and mentioned his concerns with that, would he still have an option to have a permanent spot if we went with the premium reserved? Correct? I mean, is that what we're doing in place of the reserved parking?
It would
So like
cost
15.
substantially more.
I know, I'm just trying to make sure that we'd still have a spot that would say, here's where your premium reserved spot is. Every day you're in slot number 102 or whatever it would happen to be.
Yeah, that would be a specific
we were saying, right.
individual spot is that permit holder spot only.
Okay.
Our current system isn't a reserved
Right, you just
spot.
have
It's
here's
it's a
the
permit only
permit
lot.
area. I know where it is now, and
Lot.
sometimes it's used and sometimes there's a lot of
Yes.
open spaces. And
Right.
I understand. Okay.
Let me just,
Wait, what?
I knew something wasn't, this might.
It's reversed,
It's
by the way.
reversed,
Yeah, this should,
So
it's very
it
reversed.
actually is cheaper when you buy the annual one it'll be substantially cheaper. I mean.
It's 900,
If you
those
look
two
at
are
it, it's
flips.
$900. But I was like thinking about the math, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Because I'm like, when we looked at that,
Yeah, they
the
just
original
flipped it.
slide, when you go back to what the daily rate would be with
It's
the,
flipped.
it's, yeah, these two are flipped.
Yeah, down here, premium reserve
Premium
and
reserve
resident and
residence,
non-resident.
1,200.
Sorry, yes, that is flipped on the table, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Right here.
But when you look at the premium reserve resident rate, it's actually a better deal than paying the quarterly rate, right? Or
No,
about the same?
the daily fee
Oh, okay,
equivalent,
okay.
and these are per year. So the daily fee equivalent on a non-resident rate, it's about $4.54 a day.
Okay.
If you were, that's assuming that you parked all 66 days in a quarter, and then for the whole year. And then obviously the resident rate would be 25% less than that. I think
Okay.
about
I got
$3.50
those
per day.
reversed. I apologize, yeah.
There's some convenience and amenities that come along with the premium reserve spot. It's that guaranteed spot for one, but as we heard here before, it's also knowing who's parking next to you.
Right, right.
And it's a guarantee. Right now with the permit parking, any one of those permit holders could park next to you. Here, you know who's parking next to you.
I didn't hear the answer to your question, for Ellen's question. Would they have an assigned spot, like, the answer was yes. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
When would we start this?
I was about to go there, so thank you for an excellent segue. So obviously, implementation-wise, different facets of this change could be done at different times. The premium reserved portion of the proposal could be done sooner. That's really a simple matter of implementing the lottery system and issuing the permits and the logistics on the financial end for those payments, and then adding some new signage. There's existing posts out there numbering those spaces, so it's really adding that placard to denote to other parkers that this is a reserved spot. Don't park here unless you have the permit, and here's the fine and the repercussions if you do park there without the permit. That's fairly easy to implement. We do have some logistical coordination with either the UP, the Union Pacific Railroad, or Metra, depending on which lot we're talking about. That's fairly straightforward. And then depending on which option we go with, if we do eliminate the permit-only lots and let permit holders and daily fee park anywhere, we do have to take some of those parking lots and add new signage, because currently the lots that are in blue, this one in here, there's no numbering on those lots. So we do have to add new poles with cables that would then assign each space a number, similar to what we have in the lot next to it. So there's some logistical items that we have to do that would be accomplished probably in the upcoming winter, spring, and possibly even into the next fiscal year. So to answer your question, it depends on which option we go with, and then obviously we would seek to implement as many phases and facets as we can. The restructuring of the parking lot to add these 15 new spaces and move around these handicap spaces, that ideally is done in obviously warmer weather when we can actually stripe those spaces, and also when and after we resurface the parking lot. That's also the more convenient time to do those. This lot here and the other lots, though, are based on our last CIP and our budget proposals, is on the near-term radar to be done. So depending on our budget process and our allocation of funding, and then the direction of this discussion here, we would probably look to do some of this stuff sooner than later.
Spring?
Yeah, yeah, this coming year.
Also, how will we let people know about this? Or how did people know about our meeting tonight?
Well, we sent out mailers to the
Permit?
people.
So all current permit holders, we do have an address since they had to apply for those permits. So they were directly sent to their homes a flyer letting them know about this meeting. And we did have signs put up at the shelter, the new depot, and every pay kiosk in order to help let all the commuters that are daily fee parkers be aware of it. So that would be an additional press releases and our usual outreach methods. It would definitely be something we would do advance notice on in order to make sure that all users are aware of it. Additional signage out on the parking lot as well for anybody coming into the lots. There's only a very limited number of access points to our commuter parking, so it would be relatively easy to get signage, our electronic message boards, things like that, to let the users know, even those that we don't have a mailing address for. But like any big change that the village does, whether it's with commuter parking or anything, we would seek to obviously get as much early notice and in many ways as possible.
Is the premium reserved only in option one?
No, it's
It's
in all
in all of
options,
them.
yes.
Okay.
Now, based on our last meeting, it seemed like there was a consensus that most, if not all, the committee supported that. We would like to make sure, I guess, is that still the case?
Yes.
And do we have a consensus on which option or hybrid of the options? Based, I think, what we've heard, option one with the change in making the remote lot $1.50 instead of $1.75 per day, does that seem still the
I think everybody
consensus
was
of the
on board with
committee?
that, making the farthest one $1.50.
Right, can you go back to the other slide show? Because I thought I was leaning towards option 3. Is that the one that has that $1.50, but it also has the preferred parking with a permit?
My thought was too, from the last meeting, I thought I was with number 3 also. But today I'm kind of leaning towards number 1.
Can you go back to that
However, number 1 is a $2 preferred parking fee daily, correct? It's not a
Yes.
permit.
So with our adjustment to add the $1.50 per day in the remote lot, we'll say that for all options, the only difference between option 1 and option 3 is that the blue lots in option 1 can be parked in by a daily fee user for $2 a day, whereas in option 3, only permit holders, quarterly permit holders can park in the blue lots. If you're a daily fee user, you have to park in a green or yellow lot.
How many permit spots do we average right now that are used?
About 250 to 270. It fluctuates quarter to quarter, but that's about how many we have right now.
But that's users, correct?
Yes.
You were asking on how many spots.
Oh,
right?
spots, I'm sorry. We have currently about 250 spaces, I believe, that are in the current existing
In the
permit-only lot. We have more permit holders than spaces in that reserved lot.
Okay, so how many spots are in option 3 with permit parking now?
Be about 280 to 290, I believe. I think it's 54 spaces in this blue area that we'd be adding.
It's with permit?
Mhm.
Okay. I like option 3.
So we do believe, even though we're expanding that kind of permit-only area, just based on our current permit volume, there's demand and those spaces would get utilized. And I believe with the new structuring, with the rates and with the logistics of where you can park, this will hopefully encourage more people to get permits as opposed to using daily fee on a regular basis.
Right.
If the board wants to chew on this a little bit, we can continue this discussion. I mean, we could always email out these slides for you to review and think about, and we could regroup at another committee of the whole.
Yeah, there's been a couple of.
I
there's
think
a
we
lot of
find out
balls
about those
juggling.
motorcycle stuff. I think
Throwing
there's a
a
few
couple
things we
curveballs
need
at
some
you
more
tonight.
definitive direction on. I'm open to.
Well, I think, but let's, for just the basis of this meeting, we have a consensus that everybody wants the $1.50 lot. That one part will always be $1.50.
I do.
We do have a consensus that we want a premium reserved spot.
Yes.
We want to, that's all the same. So where we're looking at is, do we allow permit-only parking to remain, or do we let everybody park where they want? One question I've always, can a permit parking person,
Permit parking person, say 3 times, Peter Piper.
can a permit parking person park anywhere they want?
Currently, yes,
Yes.
and in our proposed model, yes,
Okay.
except
And
for the
it's
premium
still
reserved.
except for the premium, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know I've seen people with parking permits parked outside that, so they can park anywhere they want. Okay, so for the basis of giving staff some direction, do we want to look at what the permit only would be? Do we want to reserve a section in the permit only parking just for permit only, like we have right now?
Sure.
And just make that more of a, it would be more constricted, and then letting the $2 daily fees park where they can in that particular area. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I know you're, yeah.
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Are you saying option 3?
Well, I'm saying option 3, but with a designated permit-only parking.
And then outside of that. then it's
Outside of that,
right.
$2, so there would be X number of spots for permit-only parking in that blue area. And then outside of that permit-only parking, there would be just, if people want to pay $2 to
That's
park
option 3.
designated.
That is option 3.
Okay.
But at
Except for-
175.
But
At
$175.
$1.75, yes. You could make it $2. We did a financial estimate on that. It does actually would provide the highest revenue. I believe it would be another, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, another 10 grand higher than option 1 or so.
Yeah,
Yes.
the cost to do that. And then we're losing, but did you really calculate in the $1.50 lot since there's hardly anybody ever parks there? Is that part of you allocated funds for every spot that we have?
So for option 3, the assumption we made is if all 46 spots use the $1.50.
Okay.
So really, when you're looking at option 3, that's if all 46 spots were used at $1.50. So it could be higher because you still have people that will not want to walk that distance.
Yeah, that's very conservative in terms of the revenue side, because that's probably not realistic that all 46 will get used
Right, I
every
would
day.
agree.
But that number reflects kind of the worst case scenario in terms of our revenue.
Well, I like the premium reserved. I do have several residents saying, why can't I just buy a spot and keep a spot?
Yeah.
That'll be my spot. So this, I think, rectifies
with
that. I like the idea of putting it into a lottery since we only have a few. And see, like Jake and I were talking about this earlier, is that, if it works, then fine. Maybe if you have a lot more people, then maybe we'll look at another option. But if we don't, we fold those back into, back into the general pool, I would imagine.
Well, you're set up that if you make these premium reserved, the 15 of them, and you find that there's demand there's 50 people that want them, you'd have the option to expand that and make it a bigger lot
Right.
at some point and say, hey, we're just going to expand what the premium reserved is. On the flip side, if we have 15 and there's 5 people to apply for it, we may say, okay, we've got a real small little premium reserved area.
Yep, exactly. There's flexibility to expand or reduce the number of spaces. In that case, it's simply signage and a quick update to the program in the pay station kiosks.
So if we went with option 1 and then just incorporated the addendum of having the $1.50 lot on the way far out for the people that want to get their steps in, what's the cost? You'd have to calculate what the difference is on that. It's not going to be it's not going to be a major difference.
As far as the upfront cost, the main difference would be we will have to create all new posts and signs in the blue lot up north. And then we would have to, regardless of any of the options, replace the signs in all the lots down here, because you would need to make sure that they're color coded to the correct status for those lots. Now granted, even if we did nothing, those signs actually need to be replaced anyway. A lot of them are starting to, they're on very substandard rotting metal posts. So I do consider that cost a necessary cost anyway in terms of maintenance. So it just happens that it's also a convenient time to do it when we implement a new parking strategy here. So the main difference in cost will be just the new signage in this area here. These signs in the far northwest lot are actually already green and in good shape, so those actually don't need a change. Those are the only ones that are in decent shape, actually. And they're already overhead, yes.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is what option, in a perfect world, what you would go with option 1 or 3?
Option 3.
Option 3? 3.
You go back to 3.
I go 3 or 1,
Now,
but
you were talking about permit parking that on like Fridays, they aren't full because people don't go, into the office on Friday and stuff like that. And so that's why we wanted to get rid of the permit parking.
Yeah, exactly. Just observationally, I just happen to be spending a lot of time in the metro lot these past 18 months. Yeah, on certain days, particularly Fridays, like you mentioned, there's not as many permit holders that may be commuting that day. So I will see frequently the back fourth of this lot actually empty and yet this green lot will be all full because that's the daily fee lot. So the part of the benefits of option one is that you allow, when the permit holders aren't in full force, the migration of people paying daily fee to get closer.
Do you right now have a specific number of people that have the permit parking? Permit parking, when do they pay? Do they pay on quarterly? So, okay, so
Yes.
quarterly, so 4 times a year they pay.
Yeah, for the January through March quarter, it's due in December.
Okay,
Yes.
and so those 4 times, do you always have the same number of people buying a permit parking?
It fluctuates, but it doesn't fluctuate a lot. It fluctuates, say, plus or minus not even 10%. Like I said, I think 250 to 270 is kind of the range it's typically bouncing around at. But I do see that increasing with our proposed changes here. I do see that going up slightly.
Well,
But you did
Hopefully
say
more.
that we had more people with permits than spots already.
Yes, if all the
Right.
permit holders were to all park on the
right,
same
that's what I was
day,
gonna say.
some of them, about 20 to 30 of them, will be parking in a green, or are parking outside of this one lot right now.
Right.
Which is why options 2 and 3 proposed adding another permit-only lot on the south to, one, satisfy that demand, and two, since it is a premium location, treat it accordingly.
Right. I like 3.
I'm 3.
Kim, where are you at?
I mean, I'm fine with 1 or 3,
Yeah.
so.
Chris?
1 or 3?
You know, why don't we take a little bit more time to go over this, talk with staff a little bit more. Like I said, we threw a couple curveballs in here with adding the premium reserved, and that, though I think that would be a big hit. We get asked about that all the time. That way people have a guaranteed spot and they can run to their train. So we can kind of see how, kind of talk about it. But if you have any other questions about this, can you reach out to Eric or Jake about it? And we'll bring this back at another committee meeting.
There is somebody that just walked in, or, okay.
One more question. Is there maybe a desire to, since the premium reserve concept seems to be universally desired, for us to try and implement that sooner while we figure out the details of the rest of the configuration?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah. And
I think maybe just make the change all at once.
There's benefits to that as well, yes.
and then we,
Less confusion.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Another thing,
Okay.
where does everybody stand on, let's at least get people thinking about the backing in parking, restricting or not, non-restricting?
I agree kind of with Ms. King. I do back in a lot just because I don't have an SUV and I don't have an older one. I don't have one with a camera backup system. So in the darks especially, it is very difficult. So I do back in. I don't park at the Metro lot, so I'm not on an angle, but when I can back into a spot, I prefer to back into a spot so I don't hit somebody.
I understand. That makes perfect sense. I think the challenge is based on the lot, the way this is structured, and it's one way. Because I agree with you. There's many times when I go to a parking lot, I just pull all the way through so that I can pull out at the end versus having to back out. Makes perfect sense. My concern is a safety issue. And what the chief was saying was that with the one-way traffic and with what someone else was saying with, as much as someone can be very courteous, there are a lot of people that are not going to be, and then it creates a potential traffic backup and a potential accident on the flow of traffic. So I can't support backing into it based upon the way that the configuration of the lot is. And there's no way to, it doesn't make sense how you back out that way, and then you're going to have to, I think you have a chance of clipping someone trying to come out, either that or you're going the wrong way.
She said she's all the way at the end.
I know, but I understand what you're saying, but that's not everybody that's doing that. I mean, that might be you, but that might not be other people.
Yeah, I would get that if you guys decide to go with it, it would be easier to just do the whole parking lot.
Right. I'm just looking at consistency is what I'm looking at.
I would just find the best part where I could.
Right. I can understand that.
Because there are some places where I could be parking.
Right.
And just go straight, the little side thing.
Sure.
But I like the convenience of trying to get in the middle. We have a bunch of road parkers in Cary, I'm sorry to say.
Well, we could go road parkers, period, in the world.
Yeah, there are people that won't let you,
Yeah.
in that middle road, won't let you out.
Yep.
I always make a point to stop and let somebody out because I've parked in that middle road and literally counted 20-plus cars.
Right.
Before somebody would let me back out. It's like, I'm doing the same thing you are. I'm off work, I'm going home to cook supper.
Yeah.
I guess it's more important that 20 of you get started before I do, you know. But
I understand.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
it is. So I try to be a polite driver in that parking lot because they're a bunch of road.
Maybe I'm partial to Cary residents, but I think it's common in all metro lots. Everybody's in a hurry to get out of
Everybody's in
their parking space and get on the road. So, but it is
Jeff, what do
very
you stand
true.
on this?
What does driving a wrong way on a one-way street ticket garner? I mean, maybe if we just sit down there and sting a few people.
We don't have that. I didn't some of those roofs.
We don't have that parking lot marked that way. I mean, it's obvious the way it's engineered that you're supposed to go one way and there's arrows on the ground, but we don't have it, signed that it says one way only or anything like that. And I think that's why people park the way they do. Number one, they want to, get out as quick as they can, but there's the potential for conflicting traffic issues here. And another thing to consider is where it's engineered. I go back to, I know somewhere down the road, we're going to go to a license plate reader. I know we're going to go that way because that's the way the industry's going. So might as well just enact an ordinance up front that addresses that right now, but I can understand where if there was a desire to phase it in, you only restrict it to backing in where it's angled, because on the green lot, they're not angled. They're perpendicular parking, and I understand. And there's, parking on the curb in one of those areas too. By the way, I drove through there today, and there was not one spot available today. It was packed today. So that would be my concern. But I'm more of the opinion that, just like we say, do it all at once. Why don't we just get it done with, and then we're addressing something that we see that will no doubt occur somewhere down the road in regards to how we account for people where they park.
If we haven't had any issues, then I don't have an issue with backing in.
Dale, where are you on that?
If we're going with license plate readers, I would do it now then too, eventually.
I'd say that they should
Pull in.
pull in.
I don't know. I have to think about that one. I get both sides.
Yeah.
So-
I totally get both sides, but I do, being downtown a lot, what gets me is you're seeing these people, no offense to the people that are backing in, but driving out the lot in front of where that dance studio is, where CG Pack. They're always, I see them all the time. And I know, I've seen them get pulled over for that. They're coming the wrong way to get out to Main Street. Instead of going around the High Road, and back onto Main Street, they coming down. I see this all the time, and people don't know what to do because they're trying to turn in there, and it's crazy with the train and all that stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely nuts. Something's going to happen one day there. Something is going to happen. But, I'm more of I like the idea of just being consistent and, just keeping everybody moving the same direction. So I would be really in favor of just keeping people pulling into the parking spots. But we could, I just wanted to get an idea where people are so we get some questions answered. So we'll bring this back as well when we talk about the final rates at next meeting or the first or second meeting in January.
We'll look at the agenda.
Okay.
Be one of the upcoming meetings.
One of the upcoming. But thank you very much. It's been a good conversation about it. Thank you for your input from the residents as well. We are foregoing executive session tonight, therefore I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no nays at 7:28.